Hey man, I'm just putting on this video as you can see it on the front here. I hope you can see it. Anyway, as it shows up here, I'm just saying just the only way I know to do it is the live session, right? To do it a live way. So I'm gonna ask you, you know, to uh, to bear with me that I had to do it this fashion, and hope you can deal with it. Thank you very much. I'm just gonna put this on real quick. And like I said, I hope it you read some of it to it, that you listen to it. Because I was listening to it and I was like, wow, this is what I be saying all the time about the truth. And then I said, okay, well, I'm gonna just go ahead and throw this up and la di da. So here you go. Goes something like this.
Principle, but it's very, very burdensome in practice. It's very tiring. It's very time consuming. There's almost no motivation to do it. There's no incentive to do it because even if you go to the trouble to do it, you're still not going to win the case because you're dealing with people who do not fundamentally care about what's true. This is what you have to understand. You're dealing with people who don't care about what's true. Liars cannot be convinced by the truth. You can't point the facts out to a liar and have him change his mind. No matter what you do, they're going to find a way. Like even like straw manning, right? Paraphrasing. Oh, so what you mean is, what you're saying is, this is another tactic they do when they don't want to engage with your argument. They have so many ways. They'll just, if they don't want to engage with your argument, they will misrepresent your argument, and then they will respond to the argument that they're making on your behalf. Say that they're trying to force their framing onto your points to reset the epistemology in the interaction. You understand? No, they cannot engage honestly. The only thing that they're interested in is validating their own framing, validating their own premises, validating their own biases, validating their own epistemology. Please understand me. Western discourse has been so comprehensively dominated by one set of epistemological assumptions for so long, for as long as anyone can remember or is in recorded history, that even the so-called critical positions within that discourse still sit inside of this very narrow range. It's the narrative shelf that I've talked about. So in the West, you can be a so-called progressive, but you still accept, unexamined, you still accept the premise that, for example, Muslim societies are uniquely prone to extremism, right? You can be a so-called liberal, and still treat Western liberal values as the universal standard by which all cultures are supposed to be measured, which is already illiberal. You can be a so-called anti-racist and still assume that criticism of Muslim beliefs and Muslim practices and Muslim governments based upon Western frameworks is all right and valid and legitimate. But you see, like I said many times before, they never truly understood. They never truly understood or internalized or absorbed any of the intellectual principles or any of the moral principles or ethical principles that they copied from Islam. You understand? It's like they looked at a Muslim library and they saw all the books on the shelves. They saw all the titles of the books, but they never realized that there were words written on the pages inside of those books. They thought it was just the titles. So they went home and they built a bookshelf and they printed a whole bunch of books with the titles on the spines, but empty pages inside. And then they put all those books on the shelf and they said, these are our values. This is our ethics. This is our morals. It's completely empty in terms of actual comprehension. They're completely empty in terms of actual comprehension. And they'll use that bookshelf with all the great, respectable, dignified, noble titles on them as proof of what their real basic, unchallenged, unquestioned belief is, which is that they are inherently always right, no matter what. So the window of acceptable thought in the West has already been established. It's from the Overton window is completely established, which is, if you put it very simply, the West is the best. That's their Overton window. The West is the best. And what's really insidious about this is that even people who think that they're pushing against that are very often still operating entirely within it. See, they're only having the arguments that they're permitted to have. They're questioning the things that they're permitted to question, and in the way that they're permitted to question it. You understand me? The foundation, the civilizational frame, the epistemological assumptions, the way the terms of the discourse are said, that's never questioned. That's never questioned at all. Because if you question it, then you step outside of the window entirely of acceptable discourse. And when you do that, you stop being taken seriously by the people who are inside the window of discourse. This is why the brother in the chat who was talking about Switzerland, he thought that he was introducing nuance when he said we can't just say that the West is evil. So he thought he was being sophisticated. He thought he was being fair. But actually what he was doing was policing the boundaries of the window, the Overton window, the acceptable discourse. He was ensuring that the conversation must remain within the terms and the conditions that Western discourse sets for how Muslims are allowed to discuss themselves and to discuss the West and to discuss their relationship with the West. You understand me? You have to remain critical of your own community. You have to remain open to Western critiques of the Muslim community. You have to remain inside the frame that positions Western liberal values as the neutral standard. You have to accept that. That's the window. That's the Overton window. That's the acceptable discourse. And he was enforcing that from inside our own community. And the defense against this, the defense against the imposition of this framework is the most difficult thing of all. That's the most difficult thing because it requires you to question not just specific claims within an argument, but it requires you to question the framework in which the claims or the argument is being made. You understand? You have to do epistemological work. You have to ask, whose frame is this? Who set the terms? Who set the boundaries of this framework? Who decided what counts as evidence within this framework? Who decided what counts as reasonable? What counts as unreasonable? What counts as extreme? And who benefits from those decisions? You understand? Once you start asking those questions, once you start examining the frame rather than just questioning things operating within the frame, then you begin to see where the frame distorts your view of reality. Wallahi, it's tiring. It's very tiring. Look, understand, this isn't just about political disagreements. It's not just about this or that Muslim government, this or that Muslim country, or what have you. This is not even at its root about history. It's not about statistics and the mechanisms of imperialism or what have you. This is about what kind of witnesses we are. You understand me? What kind of witnesses we are as Muslims. Like I've talked about many, many times on this channel, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has called us to be witnesses over mankind. And our testimony, how we describe reality, what we say happened in the real world, and what we say is happening right now in the real world, that carries a moral weight to it that doesn't exist in the West's secular frameworks, materialist frameworks. We're not talking about people with opinions. We're talking about people who are held to account for the testimony that we give. We're held to account for every word, for every claim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran is very severe about false witness, false testimony. That's listed as one of the most serious of sins. And it is listed as a serious sin in the context of bearing witness about worldly matters, dunya matters, not just religious matters, about the world, about what happened in the world, about what is happening currently in the world, about the nature of the reality and the character and the shape and the form of the reality that we inhabit today. You understand me? So when a Muslim gets up in public and says something like the Gulf monarchies are imperialists in Africa without examining any of that, without examining the mechanisms of imperialism, without applying any sort of examination of the definition of those terms between what imperialism actually is and what they're describing, right? They're bearing false witness. Wallahi, you're bearing false witness. You're giving a false account of reality to people who will now form their own understanding and who will determine their own loyalties and their own attitudes and their own actions based upon your account and your testimony. You understand me? Now, you can bear false witness without technically lying. I want to be clear about this. I've said it before. Lying requires that you know the truth and you're saying otherwise. You understand? These people believe what they're saying. That's what makes it so dangerous. The sincerest false witness is someone who doesn't even know that they are testifying to a lie. They don't know that they're lying because you cannot give accurate testimony about a reality that you do not see clearly. You understand? So the first requirement of the witness isn't even courage, though courage is required, but that's not the first requirement. The first requirement is sight. It's vision. It's understanding what you see. It's knowing what's actually there. Once you can see it, and seeing it in and of itself is a process, then comes the testimony part. First you see, then you testify. And yes, in the testifying part, there can require a degree of courage, although I'm not sure if that's the right word. Really, I think it's not about courage. It's more about deciding who you fear the most, just being more discerning about your fear. In other words, fearing the last day more than you fear today, fearing the last day more than you fear today or tomorrow or what have you.
and fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than you fear the people. That's what it takes to testify honestly. That's what it takes to be an honest witness. You have to not only not fear the power structure, but you also have to not fear the people. You have to not fear the people. Because, you know, we have this phrase, speaking truth to power. And we always understand that in a very specific way, which means speaking truth to the rulers, speaking truth to the government, and so forth. Musa alayhi salam standing in the court of Fir'aun, and so on. That's the template. But Nabi Musa alayhi salam, he also had to stand up and tell the truth to his own people too. He had to confront his own people too. He had to face backlash from his own people too. You understand me? That's also speaking truth to power. I mean, we talk about speaking truth to power, but sometimes that power that we need to speak truth to is popular opinion when that popular opinion is wrong. Because the most potent propaganda machine operating in the world today is not any government. It's not any government. It's not any state apparatus. It's not any intelligence service that has their disinformation budget and what have you. No, it's the people themselves. It's the people themselves. Social media. You understand? Social media gave misinformation the ability to spread worldwide and to solidify in people's minds with just stunning, breathtaking velocity. It's amazing. See, this is different from state propaganda in a very crucial way, because when a government spreads a false narrative, when the government lies, there is at least theoretically a mechanism of accountability. You can identify the source. You can fact check. You can challenge the institution. You know, you can point to the named actor and demonstrate the lie. There's someone to hold responsible, technically. Plus, people, most of the time, most people are already skeptical anyway about whatever the government says. Everyone is already skeptical about government narratives, generally speaking. But when the people themselves participate in spreading a false narrative, there's no mechanism of accountability. There's no institution that you can name, that you can challenge. There's no specific actor who's to blame. It's us, ourselves, just the crowd. And the crowd doesn't care about evidence the way that a person who's sitting across from you, who's sitting in front of you face to face, the way that they might care about evidence, or the way that they might be made to care about evidence. No, the crowd only responds to group sentiment and shared consensus, to identity, group identity, the emotional satisfaction of feeling certain about something. It's reinforced by the agreement of others. Right? It's fortified by popular approval. It responds to the social pressure of everyone around you believing the same thing, and the social cost that you know would be inflicted for anyone who questions it. See, you challenge wrong popular opinion in any online Muslim community space, you're going to face a community and you'll face accusations of being a sellout. I have. You're a defender of oppressors. That's what they call me. You're Uncle Tom for the Gulf states. That's what they call me. Or they'll say you're AI. That's what they call me. No, the social penalty for challenging popular misinformation is very often higher than the social penalty for challenging official lies. Because official lies are anyway usually transparently dishonest and almost reflectively people reject it. But you challenge the crowd's beliefs. Well, the crowd themselves feel attacked. It's an attack on their shared identity. It's an attack on their communal solidarity. And the crowd enforces their beliefs the same way that crowds always enforce their beliefs, through social pressure, through ostracism, like I say, through labeling any dissenter, any disagreement, anyone who disagrees as a traitor or as a fool. And this enforcement mechanism works. It works very well. Most people, most of the time, will not pay the social cost of saying the unpopular thing. That's a fact. They'll stay quiet. They'll agree with the crowd because the cost is real. The cost is real, and the benefit of doing it is very uncertain. It's very negligible. No one is spreading more falsehood today than the people themselves. That's a fact. Nobody, not in aggregate volume, not in reach, not with the speed that it moves through the internet. I mean, the state used to have to run propaganda operations. Now the state can the state can rely on the people to do it themselves for free, with conviction, with passion, you know, with the deep sincerity of people who believe that they're fighting for the truth. You understand me? No, popular misinformation runs today on algorithms that create cohesion and that create consensus by means of spreading. It runs on the emotional satisfaction of sharing something that confirms what you already think. And then it builds communities. It's self-funding, it's self-replicating, it's self-defending. And when you challenge it, the crowd doesn't examine the challenge. The crowd experiences the challenge that you're making as an attack on them, which triggers the defense mechanism, which is more sharing, more certainty, more reinforcement of their belief. Social enforcement against the challenger, which just makes everyone dig their heels in even more. And this operates inside our communities just as it operates anywhere else. You understand? The brother who was in the chat who talked about immigrants in Switzerland, he wasn't running a propaganda operation. He genuinely believed what he was saying. He genuinely believed what he was saying. And the brother who called Gulf states monarchies and imperialists, he was not some Islamist operative from the Muslim Brotherhood running a coordinated influencing campaign on Telegram, probably. He was just, he absorbed a narrative. He absorbed a narrative and he believed it. And he was sharing it with conviction. And there are whole online communities that are going to reinforce that foolish narrative. You understand me? And then, of course, once a narrative gets traction, then social media content creators will just echo it even more, because that's the easiest way to get clicks and likes and shares and whatnot, engagement and ad revenue. So they'll say what they know the people want to say, want to hear. I mean, the propagandists who actually do exist, you know, the ones who have actual government budgets and whatnot, they figured out a long time ago that the most effective propaganda is the propaganda that people spread themselves willingly, voluntarily. You don't need to convince anyone. You just have to convince a few. You have to convince just enough people that then they themselves will do all of the other convincing for you. They'll convince everyone else on your behalf, right? Just let the social dynamics of community and the social dynamics of social networks do the rest. The belief becomes communal, and then the communal belief becomes self-evident truth. And then it becomes part of communal identity. And then the identity becomes defended by everyone who holds it. You understand? On behalf of the narrative, without any further direction from anyone, from the propagandists, the original propagandists who planted the seed. That's how it works. This is the environment that we operate in. This is what we are up against when we try to correct these arguments in our community, among our own brothers and sisters. Which is why, yes, on Middle Nation, we block people and we remove people all the time, because there needs to be hygiene. There needs to be hygiene in our intellectual discourse, and we've let a lot of people go. We have to just let people go. You can't convince everyone. And this is all down to the fact that over generations, many of us have adopted Western epistemology, and that has shaped the way our brains work. That has shaped the way our brains work. And this is where the witness function becomes the most costly. It becomes the most costly, but it also becomes the most necessary. Listen, the prophets, alayhim salam, they didn't go to the crowds and tell the crowds what the crowds wanted to hear. No, every single one of them, every single prophet stood up against the popular understanding of their time and their place, without exception. They stood against the consensus. You understand me? They stood against the culturally embedded beliefs that the people had inherited and had defended with their social standing and their identity. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he stood up against a civilization, so-called, that had built their whole identity around the worship of idols. You understand? Against his own community's popular opinions and his own community's worldview and his own community's epistemology. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he stood up against the Quraysh, which was not a government in the modern sense, something even more difficult. If you think about it, what he was standing up against, it was a whole social order, a kinship networks, communal identity that everyone in Mecca was embedded in, and which the message of Tawheed was inevitably going to overturn, all of that. Now, the social cost of speaking the truth isn't new. The social cost of speaking the truth to popular belief, speaking the truth to popular wrong opinion, speaking the truth to the crowd, speaking the truth to the community, to the people who are not going to thank you for it, but are only going to be angry at you for it. That cost is as old as prophecy itself. And we as Muslims, we are the inheritors of the prophets. And that inheritance includes the witness function, the function to testify, to bear witness, to describe reality accurately, even when the accurate description is unwelcome, even when people hate you for saying it, even when it costs you in social standing.
Oh yeah, I'm back. Or I'm back. I'll finish this. I finished this recording because I think it's good to the end. Like I said, I was watching it myself when it dawned on me that I'd love to have the rest of this out in the audience that I talk to, so I don't have to be trying to describe so much about it, right? And so that's why, I look to put it on because without some of the background information, I see a lot of people saying, well, what are you talking about? Because they don't fathom the information or the perspective.
Turns against you for it, even when they accuse you and they slander you for it. The power of popular false belief is still power, and it still has to have truth spoken to it. And speaking truth to it requires the same thing that speaking truth to any power requires, whether it's a government or a crowd. You understand? You have to be willing to stand up when everyone else is going to go along with the narrative. You have to be willing to say, no, this is not accurate. This is not true. When the crowd doesn't care about accuracy, when the crowd just wants their sentiments validated. You understand? No, at Middle Nation, we're not here to be popular. As I've said many times, we publish on Middle Nation for posterity, not for popularity. We are not here to tell people and tell the crowd what they already want to hear. We're not trying to perform Islamic identity for social approval. We are here to think clearly about what is actually true, what's actually happening, and say it clearly and let the consequences come as they may. Because on the last day, when we stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who knows every word that we said, every claim that we ever made, and any person who was ever given a false picture of reality by our testimony, we're not going to be able to say the crowd was saying it, so we went along. You understand me? We're not going to be able to say it was too socially costly to push back and to tell the truth. We won't be able to say that. We're not going to be able to defend ourselves by saying that we were too afraid of what the community would think. We thought that our likes and our shares and our clicks or what have you were going to go down. No, the witness is responsible for the testimony, not for what others believe, not if the testimony is going to be accepted by the people, not what the crowd demands. We are responsible for the testimony, for what we say about reality, for whether what we say about reality is true or not. That's it. It's for the record. It's not for the audience. We say it for the record. And the world, subhanAllah, the world needs witnesses right now, maybe more than ever. It does not need people. It doesn't need more people just regurgitating the crowd's talking points. It doesn't need more people parroting the narratives that never actually challenge anything whatsoever that the power structure taught people to believe. You understand me? Narratives, the whole point of which is to distort and obscure reality. The whole point is to insulate the West from accountability and culpability and blame through evasion, through subject changing, through derailing, through whataboutism, and on and on and on, all the tactics that I've mentioned. Now, listen to me. You're not going to get anywhere until you recognize and accept the fact that they are not, the Westerners, the non-Muslim Westerners are not and cannot be good faith actors. They cannot be good faith actors, ultimately because they don't even know how to be good faith actors. I mean, look, be objective here, actually rational and objective. This is not normal behavior. 500 million non-Western deaths caused by Westerners in 400 years, with the death toll literally rising each century up to now. Understand? The deaths that they caused in the 18th century were more than the deaths that they caused in the 17th century. And the 19th century, the death toll was higher than the 18th century, and the death toll of the 20th century is the highest on record. 400 years of escalating carnage. You understand me? This is a certain kind of people. This is a certain kind of people, and you have to recognize this. It's a certain kind of people, and it's a certain kind of so-called civilization. And they don't acknowledge it. They're kind of people who do it and don't acknowledge it, and they don't want it to be acknowledged. You understand me? They not only don't want it to be acknowledged, they want to insist on being treated not only as if they never did all of that, they want to be treated like they're the opposite of the people who did all of that. They want to be treated like they are the pinnacle, right? They want to be treated like they're the pinnacle of virtue and goodness and humanity and so forth, decency, civilization, advancement. This is how they want to be treated. So it's not just that you can't talk about what they actually did. You have to pretend that they did all kind of great things. Think about that. What kind of a people is this? What kind of a people is this? You have been objectively, you have been a force of unprecedented death and destruction in this world. But you insist on being treated as if you are a force of unparalleled brilliance, unparalleled refinement, unparalleled ethics and morality and rationality and so forth. No. Uncle Sam is a mass murdering, satanic, cannibalistic, perverted serial killer. Yes, and he thinks that he's sitting on the judge's bench, or he's acting as a prosecutor, accusing you and I, accusing the Muslims, accusing the global South, accusing Africa, accusing Asia, accusing Latin America, so-called. Well, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. No, they don't acknowledge it. They don't acknowledge what they've done. They don't confess to it. They certainly don't apologize for it. All they do is play word games. That's all they do. While they do everything that they can by hook or by crook to keep the truth from ever being articulated or acknowledged or recognized or identified. There's a certain kind of people, and it's not normal. It's not normal. And it's not normal for you to pretend that it is normal. It's not normal for you to ever expect that you are not dealing with the kind of people that you absolutely know they are. To lie to yourself. You understand? No, this is the most violent, the most murderous, the most thieving, the most cold-hearted, the most devious, treacherous, lying, deceitful, bloodthirsty, so-called civilization in human history. But you act like they're just like you. And you act like if you treat them and you judge them based upon the irrefutable evidence of their own actions and their own behavior, that somehow that's you being unfair. No, I did a whole series about so-called white people, about Europeans and their ancestors and their descendants and their culture and how it all developed and what kind of a mentality they have and how living in that culture, growing up in that culture, whether you're so-called white or not, you inevitably do become like them in your psyche. You adopt their ways of thinking, their paradigms, their epistemology, just as confused and as chaotic and as arbitrary, just as dishonest, just as untethered to any kind of fixed moral standards. You'll become the same way. And I'm telling you, based on the evidence, this is a certain kind of people. And I'm not saying this so you hate them. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying to hate these people. I'm saying to be honest about these people. Be honest to yourself about these people. Look, telling the truth about them is going to sound like hate, but it's not hate. It's just recognition of reality, acceptance of reality, and calibration of reality, calibrating how you deal with them based upon that reality. You understand me? Do not expect honesty. Do not expect sincerity. Do not expect that they're telling you the truth ever. Do not expect that they're being rational. Do not expect that they're being fair-minded. No. Expect them to be dishonest. Expect them to lie. Expect them to be disingenuous. You understand? Expect them to be manipulative and conniving. Expect them to be irrational. Expect them to be illogical. Expect them to be unreasonable. And expect them to not care at all about you. Expect them to not care at all about the truth, to not care at all about morality or justice or fairness. And do not ever expect them to deal with you in good faith. This is what I'm telling you. Know who you're dealing with. That's all I'm saying. Know who you're dealing with. Look, if I tell you that there are poisonous or venomous snakes in a jungle, I'm not telling you to hate the snakes. I'm not telling you to not go into the jungle. I'm telling you to be aware of what's in there and be aware of what you're dealing with. That's all. That's all. See, their deception, in fact, their deception, in order for it to be dangerous, their deception relies upon your own self-deception when you lie to yourself that you're dealing with people who are just like you, because you're not. You're not. They are not like you. They're not like you, and they're not going to change, and you're not going to change them. I think 400 years is long enough to know. I think 400 years is long enough to know that they're not going to change, because it's actually been much longer than 400 years anyway. Now, they're still, until now, holding up their same approach to the world as superior, the same approach to the world that has made them so monstrous. And every interaction that you have with them is about them trying to validate that same approach that has made them monstrous. So no, they've never been normal. They've never been normal, and they're not normal now. And there's no indication whatsoever that they're going to become normal in the future. So when you deal with them, when you interact with them, when you engage with their discourse online or in any other venue, just remember this. That's all. Just remember this. Don't forget. It's never going to be a question of whether or not they're going to be dishonest or whether or not they're going to be deceptive. It's only ever going to be a question of which tactics they're going to employ and whether or not you can identify them.
Sorry to break it to you, but if you bought the Natural Healing Handbook recently, you might wish you waited, because our end of year
Hey, everyone. Thank you for listening. Let's revive our ancestors' reputation by speaking the truth. I gave you this guy here's perspective on truth because it's a testimony to the Creator. We have to utilize that kind of power in our everyday life, our everyday thought, and our everyday breathing. And therefore, we can rise up like the heat on a hot day, because then we'll really be in our greatest power. Thank you very much for listening. Share it around. Hit the like button. Comment if you please. Thank you very much. I'm out. Good day.